You know that app on your phone, the one where you track your period? It probably feels like a simple private calendar. But what if I told you that every time you log a symptom, you're actually adding a tiny piece to a massive global health revolution? Well, today, we're diving into how your data is helping to close a medical research gap that's been around for centuries. So let's just jump right in with a huge question. What if tracking your period could actually literally change the world? I know, it sounds a little dramatic, doesn't it? But the data is showing it's not really an exaggeration. We're going to follow the journey of your data, from your phone screen to a state-of-the-art research lab, and then all the way back to you. All right, so let's start at the very beginning. This whole thing kicks off at the most personal level you can imagine, with you, your cycle, and the data you decide to share. Millions and millions of us are doing this every single month. But it's totally fair to wonder, where does all this incredibly personal info go? Especially now, with data leaks and privacy issues everywhere, that's probably the most important question we could ask. Okay, so let's break down how it's protected. We're going to use the model from the app Clue as an example. First, you track your cycle. Right away, all of your personal identifiers, your name, your email, all of it, are stripped away. Just gone. Then, to make it even more anonymous, the data gets bundled into these huge groups. So, for instance, your data might get lumped in with everyone in your age range and a city with at least 100 other users. It's only after this whole intense process that the data is ready for science. And this is where things get really, really cool. That one single protected data point of yours joins millions of others. And together, they create this absolute tidal wave of information that researchers can then use to make some pretty incredible discoveries. To really get why this is such a big deal, you need a little bit of context. For decades, medical research has had this massive gender data gap. I mean, studies were mostly done on men, and the results were just sort of assumed to apply to everybody else. This quote here really nails it. This is a chance to finally fix that historical imbalance. And the scale we're talking about is it's mind-blowing. I mean, look at this number. In just one study, researchers at Stanford University analyzed over 240 million observations. Trying to get that kind of data with traditional methods would be basically impossible. This has created a scientific resource that has just never existed before. So, what are scientists actually doing with all this data? Well, they're starting to solve some really old medical mysteries and find connections that nobody had ever even thought to look for. Let's kick things off with a surprising one. Have you ever wondered if the actual air you're breathing could mess with your period? Well, researchers at MIT did. And it turns out, after looking at 2.2 million cycles, the answer is a pretty clear yes. Higher exposure to certain air pollutants was directly linked to more irregular cycles. Now, this is a perfect example of a connection you could only ever spot when you have a giant data set from all over the world. Okay, here's another one. Heavy menstrual bleeding. It's a common condition, but it's always been kind of fuzzy. Like, how do you even define heavy? Is it just about the amount of blood? Well, some amazing research by Clue and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation found something crucial. It's not just about blood. When people reported having a heavy period, it was super strongly linked with more pain, more fatigue, and how much it messed up their daily life. Their ability to work, to hang out with friends. So this is a huge deal. The data helped shift the medical definition from just a simple measurement to a person's actual quality of life. And honestly, we're just scratching the surface here. Look at all this stuff. You've got Johns Hopkins looking at the link between gut health and PMS. Stanford is asking if the menstrual cycle actually has a bigger impact on our mood than, say, a weekly rhythm. The questions are endless, and for the first time ever, we have the data to finally start answering them. But this whole revolution isn't just about researchers in a lab somewhere. The most powerful part is when all that knowledge gets put right back into the hands of the people who provided the data in the first place. And this is so important, because the reality is, in many parts of the world, getting access to even basic menstrual health knowledge is incredibly difficult. Stigma and taboos mean that entire generations of people have never really had the chance to learn about their own bodies. And you can see the direct impact of this so clearly. A study on the app Flow found that new users started out with only about 34% of them being able to answer basic menstrual health questions. But get this, after just 3 months of using the app and its educational content, that number shot up to almost 53%. That's a huge 18.7% jump in knowledge.
And it goes way beyond just the facts. Look at these numbers. Menstrual awareness went up, which is great, but the one that really got my attention is this. Menstrual stigma decreased by over 8%. Just by putting clear, factual information on people's phones, these tools are actively breaking down long-held taboos and shame. So, when you zoom all the way out, you start to realize this isn't just a bunch of cool apps and some interesting studies. It's a coordinated, strategic global movement. See, on one side, you have all the old problems: stigma, no education, that gender data gap we talked about, and just plain inadequate healthcare. But on the other side, you have the solution: digital tools that lead to data collection by users, which then fuels accessible education for everyone. It's a complete system-wide shift. And a massive shift like this doesn't just happen by accident. It's actually guided by a strategic model called a theory of change. I know, it sounds a little academic, but you can just think of it as a super detailed roadmap. It helps everyone figure out exactly how a small action, like you downloading an app, can eventually lead to a huge long-term goal. Here's a quick look at how that roadmap works. The foundation is the data you provide. The activity is the app itself, giving you education. The outcome, like we saw, is better knowledge and less stigma. And the ultimate impact? The big why? Well, that's improved health, greater economic security, and something you really can't put a price on: dignity. So yeah, the data revolution is here. That little dot you tap on your calendar is part of a massive collective voice. For the first time in history, on a global scale, millions of bodies are communicating their patterns, their pains, their needs. The data is talking. The only question is, are we finally ready to listen?